Te koto te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Te koto nā manhere, no mai, hire mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atoa. Te koto tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to this space made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for 116 years. Few know we are here or how long we have occupied this space. Fewer still know what we do here. We blow bubbles that reflect the values that we hold. Over time, those values have evolved, as have the times and the issues that have dominated our lives. Some have burst, but new ones have been blown over the years, for we have not stood still. Our commitments have not just floated into the ether, never to be heard from again. We remain true to our 7 principles. It's a risky business, blowing bubbles. They are fragile. They are as fragile as they are beautiful. When they pop, new opportunities arise, challenging us to grow and expand who we are. We welcome you today to our bubble-blowing community. If you're here for the first time, we know it's not easy to enter through our threshold unaware of what awaits you. Who knew there'd be bubbles? We commend your courage. We also assure you that you can relax. Nothing untoward will be asked of you, but we hope you will stay for morning tea. It's our sacrament of hospitality, a time when we can welcome you informally. My opening words are by Leslie Takahashi. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truths in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in the course, that the margins hold the center. As we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition and to each other.
Hello, my name is Paul. This is a candle of joy. I just got back from Samoa training teachers and Ministry of Education staff and a Peace Corps volunteer. As many of you know, in 2014, the Peace and Social Justice Fund and the church purchased 16 computers, and we ran a pilot program there helping children with dyslexia. Pilot program ran very well for 2 years. then there were significant staff redundancies and the program stalled. So I went up again just last week with a very low bar, mind you, because things have been pretty frustrating over the last 2 years with the staff shortages. But actually, things are now up and running again. The internet provider there, Blue Sky, has donated internet access for schools every school day of the year between 8 in the morning and 4. And the group that we're working with in Christchurch, who developed the dyslexia program, have developed a web version so the children will be able to access it with the web. So we're certainly not looking for any more contributions from the church in terms of Samoa. In terms of Tonga, definitely yes. But in Samoa, the first phase, the pilot phase, is over. Now it's just a more phase of assisting the ministry to roll it out throughout the country.
I recently read that 96% of Unitarians in America now identify as Democrats. I'm not sure how reliable that figure is, but it sounds about right, especially after the last election. Those who were repelled by candidate Trump were stunned that he was now their president. They sought to make sense of this outcome and to find comfort with others wanting to live in denial of the reality of a President Trump. So attendance at Unitarian churches shot up in the aftermath of the election. I blame the shock on their Facebook news feeds. All their friends agreed with him that Americans would never elect him. The people who supported him weren't numbered amongst their Facebook friends. How could they take seriously anyone who watched Fox News or quoted Sean Hannity? My daughter, who lives in an enclave of wealthy, predominantly white, but politically progressive folk on an island off of Seattle, put it best. I had no idea I was living in such a bubble. The truth is, most of us don't know we live in a bubble. No matter where we are on the political spectrum, no matter what our spiritual beliefs, no matter what our socioeconomic status, no matter our gender identity, sexual orientation, nationality, race, age, education, vocation, abilities, or hobbies, we live in a bubble. While we don't necessarily recognize that we do, if the folks we associate with enjoy the same activities, speak the same language, share the same biases, look like us, vote like us, pray or don't pray like us, play like us, we live in a bubble. Generally, even if we have an epiphany and become aware of our bubble, that doesn't trouble us. It's a comfortable place to be, if only because those around us reaffirm how we like to see ourselves. They validate our desired self-image. Neither do we have to explain our worldview to those who reside in our bubble. They tend to share it, more or less. Nor do we have to listen to each other. We speak in code to each other that does not have to be deciphered. What's not to like about living in a bubble? That question can only be answered if the bubble bursts. I had such an experience about 5 years ago. I would have told you then that I didn't live in a bubble. I worked at the most progressive and inclusive Anglican church in New Zealand. We prided ourselves on welcoming everyone, just as this congregation does. While Anglican discipline states that only the baptized can receive communion, we invited those of any faith or no faith to come forward to receive. Being next door to the city mission, our doors were open every day to their clients to come out of the rain or cold. At night, they made their beds in our entryways. We were advocates for those on society's margins, in particular the rainbow community. While there, I began to focus on how to break the cycle of poverty and income inequality. That led to my involvement in the early days of the living wage movement. I was invited to attend a week-long training for potential leaders of the movement. Those attending were from the faith community, unions, and NGOs. To my surprise, I knew no one there. You see, even those from the faith community were not from mine, and most came from South Auckland. They served Maori and Pacifica congregations. We lived in different bubbles. My congregation had a sprinkle of non-Pākehā members, but most were white, middle class, and privileged. Their congregations were often the working poor the living wage movement was hoping to support. The differences were even greater with union leaders. Most were unchurched and not without their suspicions of those from the faith community. Besides, they spoke an alphabet soup. They spoke of the CTU, EPMU, SFWU, the NDU, the PSA, the ILO, and the IAF, for none of which did I have a frame of reference. The NGO leaders lived in a very different world from churches, struggling to compete for government grants to underwrite their mission. Churches might be a funding source, but that was the extent of their connection. In this milieu, I was definitely outside my comfort zone. The bubble had popped. It left me vulnerable, but open to new experience. The purpose of the training was to build bridges between these three worlds that they might develop the political leverage to further the movement. When the week came to an end, we were given the task to have relational meetings with someone who attended the training with whom we might not necessarily connect. Rachel also attended this training. We made a covenant to meet periodically to build a bridge between our two worlds. I guess it would be fair to say that if this exercise was graded, we passed. Now, the purpose of these meetings was not to fall in love, but simply to ask random questions of each other about what motivates us, where are our passions, what is our history, what are our challenges at work, and the like. The more we listened, the more our bubbles expanded. Rachel, while unchurched, grew interested in progressive theology and began reading my favorite theologians. In return, I learned more and more about the mission of unions and how they were evolving as the future of work changes. I even learned how to eat union alphabet soup. I eventually went to work part-time for an arm of the union supporting the living wage movement, allowing me to get to know Rachel's diverse, very diverse, collection of colleagues who mostly came from worlds outside my experience. Rachel and I, over the years since, have continued to have our relational meetings, usually over dinner. Besides sharing our days, there are still the random questions that expand our understanding of each other and what matters to us. They keep our bubble from shrinking, and sometimes they even pop it, giving us new perspective and greater knowledge of the world and ourselves. The Reverend Katie Harris argues that it is randomness that is key to popping our bubbles. She tells the story of Max Hawkins. Several years back, Max was a programmer at Google living in San Francisco. He was single, well-educated, and an unassuming white man. He rode his bike to work each day and had plenty of time and money to spend on the activities he enjoyed. But even this privileged and seemingly picturesque daily routine had begun to shrink around Max. He realized that he was only becoming closer with the people who existed within his bubble. And the people who existed outside of his bubble, well, he was growing further and further away from them. Max was becoming disenchanted with his daily routine, in part because he felt he was becoming removed from his broader community. Max didn't break out of his personal bubble by changing some small corner of his life. He recognized that changing his existing bubble would only take him into another routine. He wasn't satisfied with that because he wanted to experience life more fully by walking in other people's shoes. This realization that his bubble was shrinking in a bad way led him to reconsider how he used, of all things, the local event feature on Facebook. This feature promotes local events according to your interests. Max decided to capitalize on this feature by creating an app that randomly selected a local event for him to attend. He didn't just want to ask random questions. He wanted to crash random events. He went to school fundraisers, bake sales, car washes, professional society meetings, social group meetups, support groups, political rallies, concerts, you name it. Not only did his random crashing open him up to meeting new people, he developed a greater understanding of his community. Max so appreciated these random experiences, he ultimately used his app to randomly choose where to live. He subsequently lived in Vietnam, Germany, India, United Arab Emirates, and Slovenia. And he continued to use his apps in these other countries. There was only one difficulty with his app. Sometimes it sent him to events that he found morally reprehensible. Events centered on objectifying women or exploiting people with different abilities. Sometimes it was a rally supporting views that were in dramatic opposition to his own beliefs. When faced with the first event of this nature, Max had to literally stop and ask himself, what is the right thing for me to do here? Do I attend anyway? Do I try to educate and change people so they see the error of their ways? Do I walk away and skip this event because I'm so opposed to what it represents? After much thought, Max realized that the purpose of his app wasn't to randomly sample the parts of his community that he agreed with or liked. It was about walking in other people's shoes so he could better understand and connect with the people outside of his bubble. The people he normally wouldn't encounter. So he braced himself, tried to withhold judgment, and attended anyway. Rather than try to change the people he encountered, he tried to understand them and get to know them. He set aside his personal bias, asked questions, and allowed himself to be vulnerable and open. Through that work, Max found more compassion for the people he encountered, and he grew to understand all the thousands of steps they had taken that had led them to that point in their lives. His heart and his mind expanded along with his bubble. I admire Max's intentionally seeking randomness. It's more my style to let randomness happen. like being invited to the living wage training. I had no idea how transformative it would be. I just accepted the opportunity. It is not dissimilar to when I got a call from a Catholic deacon asking if we might be willing to provide sanctuary to Indian students who the government wanted to deport. It was a level of randomness I would not have gone looking for. But what's presented required me to either to avoid it or to welcome it. For those among us who welcomed them, housed them, fed them, got to know them, it changed the size of our bubble significantly. It made us aware of the sanctioned abuses of these students, the corruption of the foreign student education industry, the under-resourced New Zealand Immigration Department's ability to administer visas in a fair and just manner, and the political system's failure to rectify the injustice done. Most of us would have gone on blindly, unaware of these issues, except for that random phone call. Garrison Keillor once observed that Unitarians not only don't own guns, they don't even have friends who know anyone who owns guns. The truth of this witticism is that we like to blow bubbles, but we're not good at popping them. That is to our detriment. Whether we are intentional like Max and seeking random events, or just open to them like we were to giving sanctuary, we need to pop our bubbles. Yes, we will form new ones, just bigger ones, we hope. Our strength as Unitarians is our openness to many ways of seeing the world. And it's okay. Engagement doesn't mean agreement. It means listening and seeking understanding. Amen. For our meditation, I invite you to get comfortable. And in the silence, try to see your bubble. Is it enriching or restricting the richness of your life? For my closing words, We leave blessed by our connections to one another, to the Spirit of life. Walk lightly, that you see the life that is below your feet. Spread your arms as if you had wings and could dance through the air. Feel the joy of the breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to love and be a blessing on this earth.